I love the Old Testament law. This is not some attack against that. No, however, it's about the application of the law. That's the question. How should we apply it in our lives today? I think we're not under the law. I think that we're not even desired by God to obey the law. And I'm going to make my case for this in the next couple weeks. We're not Israel, and we're not supposed to act like we are. That's my short.
All right, couple of things there. Nobody in the Torah practicing community would tell you that we're under the law, because the words under the law have a very particular meaning. To be under the law is to be under the condemnation of the law, which is to say, so if we all here, especially in America, and any of the other people who follow me from first world countries will understand traffic laws. Okay, there's a speed limit. Most countries have speed limits. And so as long as you are within the parameters of the speed limit, you're not under the law. You're subject to the law. Okay, when you get pulled over by a police officer and handed a citation for violating that law, now you are under the law. Okay, that's an important distinction to make. Okay, yes, we're not under the law because of the sacrifice of Yeshua, but being subject to the law is different. And that actually ties directly into what he immediately said after that. He said he doesn't think we're Israel, and we shouldn't pretend that we are. So, I'm not sure if I don't know if he's a dispensationalist or not. I actually haven't looked enough into his teachings to determine whether or not that's the case. But for anybody who does believe in the new covenant, to say that we are not Israel, or at least grafted into Israel, included in Israel, part of Israel, is to cut yourself off from salvation. This is a very important point, because in Ephesians 2, Paul clearly says his definer for what it means to be without hope is to be cut off from the covenants of promise. Okay? So that's how Paul in the epistles defines what it means to be without salvation and to be without hope, is to be cut off from the covenants of promise. Now, you can say, well, sure, Brad, we're under the new covenant, and any of my TikTok followers will know I've addressed this before. Sure, I'll agree, we're under the new covenant, but you've got to understand exactly what that means, because there was never a covenant at any point in the Bible that was ever made with the Gentile Christian church. You can read all through the Bible. Matter of fact, I'm asking any of you if you could find anywhere in the Bible where God lays out a covenant with the Gentile Christian church, where he specifies the terms and conditions the way that he does all throughout the Old Testament with every single other covenant. Okay, don't come at me with the citation of Jesus saying this is the cup of the new covenant, because that's a cup that represents the new covenant. That means that the new covenant actually is found somewhere else, and in fact it is. Jeremiah 31 through 34. This is where we find the new covenant, and it's still made with Israel. Okay, so if you have separated yourself and cut yourself off and unhitched yourself from Israel, what you've done is you've actually cut yourself off from your own salvation. You've cut yourself off at the feet. And we get this from Paul. Romans 11. Paul himself explains how Gentiles are grafted in to this tree, which is Israel. And that's the whole point of Ephesians 2. He explains that, Gentiles were cut off from the covenants of promise and without hope, but by the blood of Messiah have now been brought near to the covenants of promise. You've been included and brought in. That's the opportunity that we have, and it's beautiful and it's wonderful. But that's, if you understand that in its proper context, what that means is that we're part of Israel. So to cut yourself off from that it's scary, really. And so in all that is to say that Israel has laws, and the law is part of the covenant. Matter of fact, I would encourage you right now to go through and read Jeremiah 31 through 34. because the Torah is still there. Some of your translations may say, I will put my teaching within them, or I will put my instruction within them, or some may even say, I will put my law within them and write it on their hearts. That word is Torah. That's a reference to the commandments of the Old Testament. That's exactly what that is. So even in the New Covenant, this is still present. The only thing that's changed about the New Covenant, which is actually in Hebrew, okay, Brit Hadashah, actually more properly would be translated as renewed covenant. I think he addresses that here, and we'll get to that if he does, but renewed covenant. So the only thing that's really different about it is where that Torah is written. Remember, in the Old Covenant, it was written on stone. Here in the New Covenant, it's written on the hearts of the people. And I've actually done a TikTok series on it. I forget how many parts long it is, but anyway, I wanted to touch on that before we continue with this.